gonna be real with you all on this one. I've got nothing on how to start this one. This is a video about Parasol Kirby. How good or bad is it throughout the Kirby series? If you wind up liking the video and want fun Kirby speedrunning videos weekly, please subscribe to the channel. Vote for the copy ability that you would like to see next time down in the comments. Voting ends on February 22nd, 2026, and I have a full list of abilities that we've covered in the description. Parasol is my favorite copy ability in the series, and when it came time to cover it for the spotlights, I had no idea what I wanted to do or how I wanted to tackle it. So, enjoy whatever the heck it is that I came up with. I am sure that you see the video time, so I won't waste any more of your time. Parasol Kirby, good or bad? Let's find out. I think Parasol, in terms of what people think about it, has gone through a bit of an interesting shift over the years. While it's definitely had a popularity spike since Return to Dreamland, when the gamer demographic stopped hating it very strongly, it's a bit harder to get a grasp on how people feel about using Parasol. I mean, yeah, it blocks and deals to damage to enemies above you by existing. I wish I could relate to that. Now, I know people like that aspect of it a lot. And heck, there's a top 3 speedrunner in Kirby's Dream Buffet in the whole world that, upon getting 3rd place, made it a priority to decorate the cake of the main menu with Parasol Kirby and then did nothing else. That must mean something, or yes, of course, that was me who did that. You'll actually be hearing me talk about myself a couple of times in this video, which, yeah, I know is going to feel a little awkward to say the very least, but I've let my obsession with Parasol consume me long enough to know most of what there is to know about it, so where do we even start? Why, with the move exclusive to Kirby Battle Royale, of course. Marvel at how I have a 3DS capture card. It rules! Anyway, Parasol Spin is a move where Kirby Parasol spins. Yup. Oh, okay, so while this isn't useless in a multiplayer sense, you would be hard-pressed to find uses for it in a single-player context. It can hit both Wispies and Apple Scramble, which is admittedly very nice, but so can the default attack. And even if it was the only attack that could, since it's only in Battle Royale, it has to play by the rules of Battle Royale. Those being, since most of the game modes are just on a fixed timer, you need to be absurdly good in one of the modes that isn't timed in order to stand out. Sadly, Parasol Spin doesn't really help Parasol see any kind of success in this game. Sword is still better for the battle arena, Whip is still the best for Flag Ball, and Hammer will still win you the day the best in Robo Bonkers. And when you don't have Hammer, you've still got Sword, which is better than Parasol, and most other things for Robo Bonkers. I mean, on the bright side, it's not that bad for these, and Parasol can really turn up the aggression with it depending on how difficult the CPUs are. But there's no reason to use it compared to what's better, well, except for the 7 modes where you can't speed up anything, haha, oops. In those cases, Parasol Spin is just fine, actually. So, there you go. Stop being so mean to Parasol Spin because it's rage baiting me like you wouldn't believe, even though I'm the one being mean to it. I don't really know where I was going with this. Okay, alright, let's actually be a little bit more serious here. Parasol actually has a really small moveset. Being as generous as possible in the Return to Dreamland era games, where it would have the most amount of moves, it's got 11, 12 if you count Star Allies' Chumbrella. Of course, we don't count the Chumbrella here, but also if you don't stand the Chumbrella, I will come to your house and stare at you very awkwardly until the nerves of confrontation take over and force you to stand the Chumbrella. Where was I? Oh, right, yeah. 11 moves, even less so if you're playing the fighters games. While this may seem like a death sentence, veteran Kirby runners, or channel fans who've watched enough of my videos, you buddy, know that, thankfully, you're really only counting on a small handful of moves when using them for more efficient Kirby play. Fighter, for example, may have a gazillion moves, but you're mostly only using 2 or 3 of them in an efficient setting because they're just way better than anything else that Fighter can really do. Does the same apply to Parasol, then? Kinda, sorta? See, this ability is fascinating to me, even without my bias glasses. because it really and truly does not have a lot of moves. But the moves that it does have, with the utility that it has, give it some of the most fascinating and interesting gimmicks, niches, and, dare I say it, genuinely irreplaceable usage in Kirby speedruns, even at the highest level. How so, you may ask? Well, I assume you asked, and assuming has never heard anyone before, so when you're speedrunning Kirby, an ability being good can basically be summed up by at least one of 3 attributes. It's really fast, it's really strong, or it has some weird niche that will help out with small, random areas. Being really fast is definitely the most useful, but all 3 have their perks, and for Parasol, pretty much every one of its moves allow it to find success in all 3 of the mentioned areas. Trust me, some abilities can't even imagine one of these, so Parasol having a lot going for it for all of them is really, really nice. Take, for example, the most basic move in Parasol's kit, Parasol Swing. The normal attack, just Kirby going swoosh with the Parasol. On the surface, there's really not a lot to say, but there are 2 factors that make this move quite good, actually. What there's no way, oh yes way. Those being speed and hitboxes. Now let's start with speed, since that's a lot easier to talk about. Just look at how quickly you can fire these out. I don't know why this move is so fast, but in many instances where you would need to play less aggressively and maybe take some more risks, you can just pew 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 with Parasol Swing and find great success. Since there's not much to say on the speed factor, let's get into the hitbox. I don't have a hitbox viewer, so I can't quite show you the range, but trust me when I say it's big. For those who don't know, Klaire Fluffle VTuber Extraordinaire has your back. A hitbox, summed up shortly, is the range of a move's attack that will actually hit enemies. If an enemy makes contact with a hitbox, they take whatever damage that they would usually take from that move. And while the specifics may vary from game to game, Parasol Swing has quite the large hitbox. It's easiest to see how well the speed and hitbox mesh together in Superstar Ultra, where you can keep the pressure and deal big damage from a safe distance, but it's useful in other games too. I would be very biased to not mention that in some of the games, the speed, the hitbox, or even both may not be present. Wait, shoot, darn, I'm like really biased towards Parasol. Well, I guess I can't say any more on the matter. Have this, totally unrelated footage from Kirby's Adventure instead? Yeah, it's totally not related. Parasol Swing, it's got huge power, huge hitbox in this huge adventure, totally. Alright, believe it or not, Parasol actually does sort of have a niche in adventure, albeit one that you may not really expect and one that it's also kind of not really the best at. See, there's a neato Schweeto glitch in Adventure that speedrunners use to take UFO outside of levels. And while we often call it the UFO glitch, any ability in the game can take advantage of it. Basically, if you take an ability, such as UFO, to an enemy, then maim Kirby while dropping your ability on the same frame, the game assumes that Kirby doesn't have UFO, while Kirby does in fact still have what it takes to be a UFO. This is really cool because it allows you to take UFO outside of levels. But to stay on course, this works with any ability that alters Kirby's physical appearance, minus the color palette. Basically, if Kirby's carrying something, this will work. Meaning, the glitch works with UFO, sword, hammer, and, you guessed it, Parasol. There's actually a pretty weird side effect to Parasol specifically with this glitch too. While the hitbox above Kirby still exists to ensure any enemy foolish enough to bring doom and gloom to Kirby's sunshiny day will meet an untimely end, the drift that you get by using Parasol in the air, completely gone. And I hate to say this, but it is really nice. Air movement in Adventure is super important, and Parasol being able to keep up like it's actually a normal ability or something in this game is a godsend. But the real kicker with this glitch, and why it makes Parasol genuinely a lot better, even if it won't give it much use in a regular speedrun, is that, as mentioned, the game doesn't think you have an ability when you're using it. Now, viewer, let me ask you, what happens when Kirby doesn't have an ability and gets hit? Does Kirby get A, a sofa, B, an expensive haircut, or C, nothing at all and gets to keep the ability in question? Nothing at all and gets to keep the ability in question. Oh, Parasol, you never let us down. This already makes Parasol quite good for levels, but it also winds up having some pretty okay boss utility because of this too. Because Kirby's Adventure is a game that lags, as much as I love my beloved, even I can admit this, abilities will often multi-hit bosses due to the amount of time an attack stays out increasing due to lag being lag. And guess what? Parasol is just one of those abilities. Behold, the boss is getting hit multiple times with one Parasol swing. Truly, the glitch to end all glitches. Unfortunately, in a no major glitches category, Parasol loses almost everything in terms of what makes it good, since, you know, now it's slow in the air again, it dies when you get hit again, all that sad stuff. But we don't like being sad, so cheating the game it is! Yay! Although, sticking to glitches, the Kirby's Adventure theorem, which states that walls don't exist actually, nerd, can kind of be proven false with Parasol. See, in order for the Kirby's Adventure theorem to be true, you need to not only have an ability, but also make sure that the ability you have doesn't show Kirby carrying something at all times. Parasol is an ability, but one in which Kirby carries a lethal weapon at all times. So the whole walls are an implied existence shtick doesn't work. It's just like the frame perfect glitch from earlier. It doesn't work with sword or hammer either. It doubly doesn't work with UFO, since this whole thing requires you to run on the ground. Ugh, yeesh, that was a lot for the normal basic attack, huh? I'm sure glad that's over. Anyway, that's not over, because there's a second part of Parasol Swing that was introduced later in the series, Parasol Shield. This move is just like Parasol Swing, except it isn't. I'm really sorry. When you use Parasol Swing, if you hold the attack button, Kirby will continue holding the parasol in front. This acts as a shield, protecting Kirby from incoming enemies. When you release the parasol from its forward position, or when you let go of the attack button, you fool, Kirby will finish doing Parasol Swing like normal. That last part is actually really important, and I know how absurd that sounds, but in Planet Robobot of all games, Triple Deluxe to a lesser extent, Parasol lost a lot of what it had in Return to Dreamland specifically, and stuff that we'll get into later. Sad and alone, abandoned by those it once beheld, Parasol Shield became the crux of what let it fight bosses. This, again, being more for Planet Robobot than Triple Deluxe, we'll get more into that later. See, if you use Parasol Swing to hit a boss, then hold Parasol Shield, turn around really quick, and then let go, you can hit the boss 3 times in rapid succession, and then the Parasol's normal hitbox will hit them again before you do your next attack. Planet Robobot was the first game to fully remove what we like to call boss mercy frames for boss fights, so you can actually use this to get very reliable kills, and is the backbone of how Planet Robobot True Arena runs will go for Parasol. It's not the best, and this very well be the last time I say anything nice about Parasol in Robobot throughout this entire video, but pretend you didn't hear me say that. Parasol Shield has a genuine application in this game, and to me, that is quite neat, actually. But, okay, now that I've spent a full cartoon episode's length talking to you about the most basic move in Parasol's kit, let's move on. So from what we've gathered so far, Parasol Swing and Shield give Parasol some high DPS, or damage per second, from a safe distance. Normally, this wouldn't be your best option, but in fringe cases, it can certainly work okay enough. From here, what does Parasol need to succeed? Big bursts of damage would be nice, but it's still missing movement, and you can never have enough random utility for any given game. We've got a long way to go before we can commit to calling Parasol good, but let's solve one of Parasol's issues, sort of, and talk about its command grab, Circus Throw. Like many command grabs, Circus Throw involves getting close to an enemy and grabbing them by inputting a command. Shocker. What makes Circus Throw as a command grab rather unique compared to what, say, Suplex or Whip can offer is that it is a multi-hit attack. It can also be aimed up, left, or right, but that actually varies a bit depending on the game, so let's stick to talking about the multi-hit aspect for now. Believe it or not, it was like this from the very beginning. While some abilities, like Ninja and Jet, always had the attack portion be a multi-hit back in the OG Superstar days, Parasol, even back then, always had the grab part itself be the multi-hit. On paper, this is really nice, but how is it in practice? It depends on the game, but sadly, it kind of winds up being a bit of a mixed bag. As the series progressed and more abilities got a lot stronger and faster with their moves, command grabs, or at the very least ones that didn't instantly give you something super strong, kind of started falling off. I don't want to spoil too much with Parasol, but back in the Ninja Spotlight, go watch that one if you want a mini-movie after this actually a movie, wow, I talked about how strong Quad Shock was while barely talking about that command grab. Why set up a command grab when you just have an attack that does everything, you know? Parasol did grow to have attacks that fill that function, but a few games still see Circus Throw find success, and Superstar is not one of them. Shocker, I know, but in the game where command grabs are crazy OP, Parasol's being stuck to the ground and not having much going for it with the attack portion of the attack isn't doing it any favors. Superstar in general is also just a very finicky game, and Parasol's style didn't wind up meshing with it very well. It's sort of a shame, but to stick specifically with Circus Throw, it still doesn't work particularly great. Now, Superstar Ultra, on the other hand, hoo-wee, best game of all time. You've heard me say that a million times, but say it a million more. Parasol's Circus Throw in Ultra is much, much better. It still has the absurdly strong damage, but on top of that, the attack part has a much better hitbox. Meaning, yes, the attack can actually be used as an attack. I can't believe we finally made it, but here we are. Also, while the grab didn't need to be buffed much, the way that command grabs work, or rather the ease of use, using a command grab in the OG Superstar is like pulling teeth, benefits Parasol greatly. It's so much easier now that you can actually use your dash's momentum to slide forward while grabbing a star, making it way easier to take advantage of Circus Throw's multi-hit properties. Parasol in KSSU isn't a boss-murdering machine necessarily, having a fairly middling time compared to other abilities for Helper to Hero. It's still top half though, and the time it gets still comes out as really good. Yeah, basically, that's what I would say about Circus Throw in Ultra. It's really, really good, but not amazing. Even in the Superstar games, you have to wait for bosses to drop the stars to use them, which really holds these back. But Superstar isn't the only game that has command grabs, you're right? You're right? Actually, even though that may as well be true, Circus Throw does have a few things going for it in Return to Dreamland of all games. Technically, it got better in Deluxe because almost everything else in Parasol's kit was made so much worse, but Deluxe is a meanie pants game who wears its hater pants for Parasol pridely and proudly, so we'll stick with the original for now. Anyway, Parasol in this game has some really strong options for dealing with bosses, and Circus Throw kind of actually got nerfed compared to Ultra. The multi-hit doesn't work quite like it used to, now giving bosses a lot of mercy frames. But for certain fights like Mr. Duder, where he spends a lot of phase 2 in the air, and generally being unhittable by anything else, Circus Throw is useful in Return to Dreamland? More likely than you think. Yo, and in fights like Metal General, where Parasol just kind of tore it to shreds in the original, but can no longer do that in Deluxe, you have Circus Throw to fill in the blanks. It's also pretty good for hitting the new bosses that have a highly romantic relationship for being in the air that Parasol, again, otherwise struggles with. Command grabs being useful in 2023? More likely than you think. So that's Circus Throw covered now. Yes, that took much less time than the most basic move in Parasol's kit. Something more likely than you think, whatever. We now, on top of moderately high and very safe DPS, have options to quickly wrap up boss fights that may take a bit too long to prevent them from going on for too long. And now, it would make sense to start yapping about some of what makes Parasol strong or fast or some such. However, with one exception that we'll cover now, there's a lot to say about everything else in Parasol's kit. More so than what we've already been talking about, which is crazy, I know. So let's combine some of Parasol's other moves together and quickly start seeing Parasol underwater. I've heard some people on the more casual side say that they don't really see the appeal of using Parasol underwater, minus the fact that it's one of, I don't know, 5, maybe 6 abilities that you can even use underwater in the first place. It's a small list, but of that small list, Parasol is actually unique in how it's actually good underwater. Yeah, as much as I hate to spoil future spotlights, the other abilities really don't offer much of anything underwater ever. It's not a deal breaker. Water isn't a very major part of most of these games, but it isn't nothing either, you know? At least it doesn't feel that way when you see what Parasol can do. The big issue that every other ability has when they're underwater is because they can't really do anything that would give you a speed boost and relate to underwater, they just wind up giving you a damage boost. And you're underwater where there aren't any bosses to fight to begin with. The enemies go down in one hit, so who cares about the damage? Spear actually has something going for it here since it has the utility to cut ropes, something that only it can do. Well, alright, I guess Sword also has that going for it, but there's either no ropes to cut underwater, or it's just a straight up worse option than Spear, so just use Spear. Why are you using Sword? Still, if at all possible, you don't even want to go with Spear unless you absolutely have to. You want to go with Parasol, for reasons that I'm showing on screen because it's heckin' cool. I'd just rather not talk about in detail because, gosh darn it, we're not there yet, and I care about spoilers, okay? To keep it simple and brief, Parasol focuses a lot on invincibility and mobility for its underwater attacks. This is exactly what you want to see, making an absolute joke out of some entire levels. Return to Dreamland's Onion Ocean 4, which is what I've been using as the background footage for a lot of this, I think is the best example of what I'm talking about. Really, any game that involves Parasol being able to move around quickly underwater is going to back up what I'm talking about here, such as KSSU's 100% or Milky Way Wish's 100%, having Parasol keep you safe while you're floating through the water, or using Parasol to decimate Gobbler in Amazing Mirror, as mentioned already. Wait, did I mention that already? I don't think I did. I wrote this part in after the fact because I didn't before. I guess that's spoilers for something happening later. Oops. Still, there's nothing quite like seeing Onion Ocean 4 get absolutely destroyed by Parasol. But, okay. I alluded to this before, but while all of these moves for Parasol have ranged from okay to pretty darn great, and underwater Parasol dive, zooey mama is this move busted, it's time to get into the real silly stuff. The bits of Kirby speedrunning tech that shine brightest, the stuff I love showing off to those who don't know how this stuff works to watch their jaws drop. And while this next move isn't Parasol at its best, it is the one that gets the most amount of jaws dropping. I am, of course, talking about Parasol Drift? Wait, Parasol Drift? The act of slowly breezing on by in the air? That's a move? Not only that, but wasn't I just saying, like, I hated it in Adventure? What gives? Well, it is true that it isn't always ideal, but what matters far more than that is when it is. Honestly, aside from Adventure, it does a little more than change how you have to move Kirby while you're in the air, which only really negatively impacts newer runners when they're learning these games. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to imply that the newer runners don't matter, they're very important actually, but you learn how to work around this very quickly and then everything is fine. Nice and simple. Now for when Parasol Drift is good, holy smokes, I don't think you're ready for that. Well, okay, I actually think you're fully ready for that, actually. But to start with the less jaw-dropping stuff, let's talk about what Parasol Drift does for movement. Yeah, we haven't really talked about Parasol's movement very much yet, but trust me, it can pull off some crazy stuff. And while sure, Drift can help you get over large gaps, the dash attack that we'll be talking about later on does the same thing, but much better. This leaves Drift in an iffy spot because every game from Return to Dreamland onward, minus Battle Royale of all things, has that dash attack. And in Battle Royale, you activate Parasol Drift by using Parasol's charge attack and landing it. Weird and very much bad for single player, but it doesn't really change anything about Parasol in that game. So, yeah, time wasted! Parasol Drift has a lot of quirky uses beyond what you'd expect. For a fairly straightforward, while also being fairly bizarre example, Kirby's Dream Course is not a game where you'd expect Parasol to be very good. In a game of golf, in theory, you just want to make your shots really fast and land in the hole. Nothing more to it, right? Well, obviously there's a lot more to it. I just keep getting interrupted before I can get to my point. And I'm getting interrupted by myself. Weird. Anyway, the things that make Dream Course unique as a golf game wind up working out in Parasol's favor, so let's talk about the wild and wacky world of Kirby's Dream Course, featuring Parasol. Unlike most golf games, the hole you need to land Kirby in isn't static. The hole spawns once there's only one enemy left. This means that where the hole itself is can vary depending on your routing. And while this is very counteractive to everything Parasol both before and after this part of the video, Parasol excels at ensuring aerial enemies aren't going to be a problem. If you need to hit more than one enemy in the air, more likely than not, Parasol will be your best bet. Drift lasts a long time, and even if you can't directly nail them, chances are you end up so closely underneath that you can just use a jump and be just fine. Parasol also has some niche utility in this game as an ability with a break. If used on the ground, Kirby uses the green and white for some reason Parasol to slow down. Technically, this is worse than what Stone and Needle offer, completely stopping you in your tracks, but in practice, it doesn't really matter too much. You still stop yourself, which is invaluable in a game with as many bumps, water, walls, and slopes as Dream Course has. Funny enough, a discovery was recently made involving braking as normal Kirby. Now, this is definitely going to be its own video at some point, but as it turns out, pressing Y as you're rolling along functions as a reverse of boosting with the A button. For normal rolls, it doesn't do much, allowing Parasol to keep some of its utility, but with walls, slopes, etc., it does have a massive impact. Thankfully, you can still use Parasol as a break alongside this, so it's really not all bad, going to show how much variety the utility Parasol has in this game. That said, if we shift our attention to more traditional Kirby, Parasol doesn't have a dash attack in a lot of these games, and while in most of them it's just good, think stuff like Nightmare in Dreamland, Dreamland 2, that kind of thing, there is one game where Parasol's drift can do crazy nonsense, and that is Amazing Mirror. Yeah, but wait, I mentioned Nightmare in Dreamland already. Isn't that basically the same game as Amazing Mirror? No, not at all. Like, not even close. Here, let me put it like this. In Nightmare, the best you can do with Parasol Drift is gain some good momentum in the air by using it normally. We all know how that works. Amazing Mirror, though? Well, alright, if you're looking at the screen, what the heck is going on here? And why can Parasol move so gosh darned fast? Well, lots of Kirby games have this funny thing called momentum preservation. In these games, if you're running around doing your thing, and then jump and float while still holding the direction that you were running in, Kirby will immediately lose all sense of forward momentum, resulting in movement that sacrifices realism for accessibility. You move pretty fast in these games, and you don't want to be zooming and slooming all around. Oh, wait a minute, hold on, my spell check didn't go off? That means slooming is a word? What does it mean? Hold on. It's British slang for moving or wandering slowly and silently, bordering a dreamlike state. Well, I mean, Kirby and dreams, that all makes sense. What are we talking about? Oh, yeah, right. Well, what happens if you let go of whatever direction you were facing just before you begin to float? That's right, you can actually preserve the momentum you had during your initial jump. In most games, this doesn't mean much, especially in Parasol's case, considering Drift's movement isn't that crazy. But in the Orica games, or at least Amazing Mirror, Parasol is kind of schmovin' in the air, let's be honest, and due to the physics changes from Nightmare to Amazing Mirror, you'll even seeing it in action on screen. With that being said, does this mean Amazing Mirror Parasol is the best ability in the game for moving around? Well, no, Wheel is right there, like hello, and even for aerial movement, Missile has a lot more freedom, not to mention the ability to move up really fast. But outside of those, and maybe a fringe case here and there like Burning maybe, Parasol is absolutely up there as one of the best abilities in the game for movement. The runner who discovered this, Corvus Scribe, decided to do a solo run to test this out, and with very little practice, was already getting times that cleared what NCA, or no copy abilities, could pull off. There is a chance that, with some dedication, we could find spots to use it in an any percent playthrough. 100%, that's just begging to be cracked open, but for now, it's got potential. But it also has actual legitimate uses in current any percent and hundo runs already. It's far more straightforward than the wacky gablooba that we just saw it do, but Parasol is quite good for bopping bosses as well. Certainly better than Missile, probably better than Burning too. Wheel, I mean, that one's Wheel, what are you gonna do? But Parasol finds great success via, oh boy. Here we go again, Parasol Swing and Parasol Shield. I thought we were done with these. Well, aside from the fact that holding shield counts as a rapid-fire, multi-hit attack that deals crazy damage for some reason, you also do excellent numbers with another attack of Parasol's called... what would this even be called? Parasol Idol? I guess? Yeah, by standing around and doing nothing, Parasol and Amazing Mirror does dummy good numbers. And unlike Shield, you can use it to hit enemies above you. This is really useful for fights like Kracko, Gobbler, and where you see Parasol used for regular speedruns, Wiz. Granted, the modern meta opts for mixing for Hammer against Wiz for the potential time save over the safer option in Parasol, but not only is the mix a lot harder to get, to this day, there are many top-level runners that don't bother with the Hammer mix and opt for Parasol because of what I already said, not to mention Hammer is only a potential time save compared to what Parasol can do. All that because doing nothing is faster than doing something. Brilliant. And with that, we still aren't done talking about Parasol Drift. Oh, are you used to hearing we still aren't done yet? Because you're going to be hearing it a lot more. We only talked about Parasol Drift for its movement. And yeah, it's got a lot of fun stuff going on there, but what, are we going to talk about the niche stuff that it can do? I mean, I'm not sure that's going to work, but all right, I'll show you what I got. Or at least I bet someone is thinking something along the lines of, Klaire, show us what you got, like what I just said, but no, actually, we're here to talk about the absurd damage that Parasol Drift, and by extension Drift Stall, which is activated by pressing down while drifting, can deal to bosses. And no, I'm not kidding. Think I'm kidding? Shows Triple Deluxe footage. See, in Triple Deluxe and Star Allies, you can hold up on either your analog stick or D-pad, literally just whichever one you're more comfortable with, and then mash the down button on the other one to rapid fire attacks. I've heard this referred to as a machine gun parasol, and I love that name with every fiber of my being, so I'll be referring to it as the machine gun parasol for the rest of my life. Hold me to this, people. While Star Allies has some very strong tech that I'll be getting into later, this single-handedly allows Triple Deluxe Parasol to be one of the absolute best abilities for destroying bosses. Literally, it is second only to Hammer. Looking at the sum of best times, or the actual fastest recorded runs, despite the fastest Ninja run being 3 years newer than the fastest Parasol one, Parasol still holds a slight lead. And Ninja, as you know from the Ninja Spotlight if you watch that one, is really, really good for boss fights. The only problem, as you can tell by the footage, is that it is very hard. I was genuinely thinking about taking footage from somebody else instead of using my own, because I am a fraud for not being able to do this consistently. I am Alrighty, given that we can't talk about Star Allies yet because I use the forbidden technique known as building a pipe, we already only have 3 moves left to talk about. Well, I say already, even though you can see the video length, but again, Parasol doesn't really have that many moves. But thankfully, I've saved the best 3, well, okay, really 4, Drift is really good, for last. So, up next, I think we can talk about one of the more underrated moves in Parasol's kit, Parasol Dive. Okay, so the thing with Parasol Dive, for me, is how it handles bosses. Is this the move in Parasol's kit that deals with every single boss the best? Well, I mean, depending on the game, it actually kind of is. Both of the Superstar games, but especially the original, have a Parasol Dive that, if you're extremely knowledgeable on how Parasol works, can tear them apart. This is because, in both games, you can cancel your Parasol Dives, although you can time this a lot faster in the original. On paper, this means that Parasol would be a lot stronger in said original, but in practice, Ultra winds up being a lot faster. There's 2 simple reasons for this. First, Superstar Parasol, while having a really strong dive, doesn't have much of anything else. a lot of little changes were made in Ultra, enough to where I think I could honestly just give it its own video, that made it a lot better. To keep to the changes about Parasol Dive, while the jump cancel window is made a lot shorter, hitboxes in general are a lot friendlier to a lot more abilities in Ultra. In the original, getting hit by just about anything happens a lot, but Ultra made spacing things in general a lot easier for a lot of abilities overall. Also, despite being able to jump cancel immediately in KSS, you lose your float height really fast when doing so, making this nerf for Ultra fairly small. You can still jump cancel in Ultra anyway, you just have to wait a little bit longer. Of course, Parasol Dive has existed in plenty of other games aside from the Superstars. Of all things, Parasol Dive is actually a very solid move in the single-handed mode of Kirby Fighters 2. Parasol in both of the Kirby Fighters games, pretty middling overall. The original especially, where it just has worse times. I don't know, speedrunning's weird. But its best move in Fighters 2 is consistently a Parasol Dive. Similar to the Superstar games, you can use this move out of a jump immediately, land, and then repeat very fast. The positioning it gives you in Fighters 2 is perfect, allowing you to rinse-repeat this process over and over. This speed makes it far better than any other attack in Parasol's kit, even if it still doesn't have great times overall. As for the more recent games, Return to Dreamland onward, it's still pretty good, although outclassed by another move that we'll be talking about soon enough. You can use it against bosses, again finding a function similar-ish to Cutter against the grounded ones, if not for Parasol Swing actually being stronger, But it can always be good to sneak in a hit before turning on the Mayhem button with anything else. A good prelude to the destruction and all that, you know? That's all I have for now concerning bosses, but for movement, we've got a lot to talk about still. Surprising nobody, it is very, very good for moving down. Outside of Gourmet Race, though, it's actually slightly slower at moving down than normal in the Superstar games, although it still has the perk of hitting enemies below you. Definitely, as usual, better in Ultra, but not a bad move by any means in the original, especially if you're looking for an option to land. Just get really close to the ground and go pop. As for the more recent stuff, Return to Dreamland onward, again, it's far better. Unlike the Superstar games, this sucker is completely invincible for the whole thing, from the very beginning until that fateful moment that Kirby's little shoe things touch the ground. You cannot be damaged. There are a lot of moments in all 4 of these games that involve moving down while dodging enemies and obstacles that Parasol just completely mitigates. And because of the horizontal distance you gain while using it, I'd even argue that it's better than Stone at moving down. And while I know we talked about this earlier, I really need to mention how absurd this move specifically is underwater. You definitely get the most out of it in Return to Dreamland, but in all of Triple Deluxe, Star Allies, and yeah, even Robobot, if you're underwater, Parasol is your best go-to. It sadly winds up not really being necessary in Robobot, and in regular speedruns you don't see it for a lot of the underwater sections since Parasol isn't really the #1 ability in these games. But in Return to Dreamland specifically, that movement's just got the sauce. And it's got the... Oh, wait a sec, I almost spoiled something there, oopsie doopsie. It's crazy that we're this far into the video and I still have to worry about this stuff, but that's what I get for loving Parasol too much, I guess. Oh, and you know what? Let's keep this running gag going too. Now, I should also mention that Parasol Dive is in, of all games, Kirby Battle Royale, and there it is totally fine. I'd actually argue it's better off than most of the other moves that we've talked about for Battle Royale, since it does get Parasol to the ground pretty quick and acts as an aggression starter of sorts. You use Parasol Dive, whack your opponent with the Parasol Swing, and I don't know, keep whacking them with the Parasol Swing. It isn't enough to compete with Sword for the Battle Arena, or Hammer and Robo-Bonkers, but I don't know, it's kind of a decent idea for Flag Ball. Can't complete with Whip, like, at all, but Dive into Swing, it can work. Sometimes. To end off talking about Parasol Dive, shifting focus back to combat, let's start talking about a game I've really wanted to bring up for a while now regarding Parasol, that one being Kirby Star Allies. as mentioned earlier, you can still have fun with the machine gun Parasol. Oh, I know I do. But Parasol Dive actually serves two functions for giving the beatdown on bosses. The first, which just requires using Parasol Dive, is to use it really fast. Like, really, really fast. If you've ever seen Cutter in Planet Robobot, it's the same idea, just very fast. While this can actually be quite useful in many areas, at least against the grounded bosses, the spacing required is very tight, given that healing in this mode is pretty limited. On the whole, it isn't recommended for the more mobile boss fights, but for more static and grounded ones like Wispy and Goldon and Silvox, at least the first half, it can actually be better than the machine gun Parasol. Oh, say it isn't so. My maiden heart simply can't take it. But to stay on the topic of Star Allies, combat, and Parasol, let's talk about the next move in Parasol's kit, Parasol Twirl, pressing down and attack while on the ground. Kirby just kinda wins the game. This attack is really good. Well, except when it isn't, but this is one of those weird ones. But to keep it focused on Star Allies for now, Parasol Twirl is a fairly consistent option against the grounded bosses. You've got the machine gun Parasol for the aerial fights, so Parasol Twirl not being the best for those isn't the end of the world. What is the end of the world is the insane damage numbers that Parasol Twirl can pull off thanks to one simple trick. See, in the other games, when you use Parasol Twirl, that's it. You do 4 or 5 hits, depending on the game, then end the move where you began on the ground and can rinse-repeat that cycle. But Star Allies is different because the haters don't know what they're talking about. Anyway, you actually end Parasol Twirl in the air, not on the ground. You're not in the air for a while, but you do have some hang time after using it. And because some is better than none, against grounded bosses, you can use Parasol Twirl, use Parasol Dive. See, I told you I'd get back to it. I'm so good at this. To get an extra strong hit and land on the ground faster, and then, hey, you're on the ground. So you just use another Parasol Twirl. And then after that twirl, you can dive, rinse, repeat the whole process. It's really strong, to the point where it's usually even better, again, than the machine gun Parasol. You know, with how often I've been saying that, you gotta wonder why it's even good. Oh yeah, it hits enemies in the air while doing a bazillion damage. Of course. To talk a bit about Star Allies as a whole, Parasol does have some very good options for movement, but it doesn't wind up seeing much use in speedruns, outside of the boss fights at least. If you do need to use it for some sort of niche reason, like in an all puzzle pieces run, then you're left with an ability that does have really good movement and is very strong. Unfortunately, this Star Allies, where really good movement and is very strong, it's just not good enough. Yet no joke, in some other games I could genuinely see this Parasol being the best in class. But by KSA standards, it is quite good actually for the levels, guest star allies, etc. And while Soul Melter EX is a bit harder to get a read on, as there are a lot of abilities that don't have fully optimized runs, going on what we know right here, Parasol would be fairly middle of the pack with some very outdated strategies. I know I present everything in these videos like we know everything about everything, but truth be told, we just don't. And Parasol hasn't had a really good, serious solo run in any capacity since 2018. Yeah, the year the game came out. There have been lots of Parasol-related discoveries since, so we're just waiting for someone to break it wide open. Or, I guess, hopefully break it wide open. If it winds up falling short still, that would be pretty sad. Of course, these aren't the only games that Parasol Twirl is in. How does it fare in the other games, such as Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot? Well, for Triple Deluxe, it should come as no surprise that rocking the good old machine gun Parasol is a lot better than doing a little spinny spin. A hint of realism in your Kirby videos just for you. And in Robobot, the machine gun was taken away. In the sci-fi game, they took away our guns that we had in the fantasy game. Huh. Anyway, does that mean that Twirl is the best option on the ground, or in general your best bet in Robobot? The answer is both yes and no. Seriously, while it's very good for dealing with bosses, it actually winds up being weaker than that combo of Parasol Swing, Turnaround, Parasol Shield Release that I was talking about before. See, while Robobot was the one that removed boss invul in its entirety, Trouble Deluxe was no slouch in that regard either, so in both games you can get away with doing this lethal combo. No, I guess lethal is a stretch, but still, you do more damage with some other abilities, sure, but this is still quite strong, especially for something as quick to do as this. What gives Twirl a fairly major edge in many instances, more so in Triple Deluxe than Planet Robobot, is the invincibility it has. Doing comparable damage while being able to take absolutely zero from bosses while it's being used is pretty heckin' nice. Of course, it doesn't last forever, so you need to be careful with your spacing and your timing, all that jazz. But the combo of a strong, rapid-fire move that puts bosses in a checkmate position thanks to a slightly weaker, fully invulnerable move, honestly is really cool to watch, and of course, really cool to play. It is then, with a heavy heart, that I must inform you, wonderful people, that Parasol Twirl specifically received a painful punch to the gut in Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. For the record, it's still quite a good move at depleting boss health bars. In Deluxe, as well as the original Return to Dreamland, bosses still had periods of invul after every attack. How much they had varies on the attack you used, but it's still consistent depending on whatever that attack is. That means that Parasol Swing and Shield have little to no place in true arena runs, giving Twirl, on paper, all the glory that it could ever want. Except, again, it got nerfed like crazy. First of all, Parasol Twirl used to do 5 hits. Now, it still does 5, but connecting them all is a lot wonkier. Kinda weird, it definitely hurts in the precise quick kill department, but whatever, you still get good damage out of it. Oh wait, they nerfed the damage too. Without getting too much into the maths of it, the kids these days on their dang phones can't do math. Not to mention adults these days are on their dang phone and they can't do math. In the original game, you dealt the same amount of damage per hit of Twirl no matter what. In Deluxe, the first hit deals slightly more damage than the rest. What this all means is, in Return Deluxe, you're dealing about 62 damage if you can connect all of your hits of Twirl. In the original, for free and a lot easier than you could deal at 62, you were dealing 80. This is a gigantic nerf, but a lot of abilities also wound up getting nerfed in this game, so in theory, Parasol can at least maintain close to whatever ground it had from the original, good or bad. Spoilers on that front, I'm not going to talk about those, Putting aside Mecha and Sand, Return Deluxe's True Arena also brings along one other painful issue for Parasol, that being the amount of new bosses that love being in the air. Electric Duder, Hydraith, Rampaging Doomers, Crown Doomer, Spoiler Fight from Magolor Epilogue, even Fiery Puffer, which is Parasol's best new fight, likes to spend time in the air. For some of these fights, there are ways to get around this, a lot of them involving Circus Throw. Believe it or not, you love to see command grabs being good in a Kirby game in 2023, but anyone who's ever fought Crown Doomer with Parasol either took like 40 years or just hates the fight with a burning passion. Maybe both. On top of that, for some of the old fights, Parasol really relied on Twirl to get big damage whenever it could. The Magolor fights weren't pretty back then, but they look like it in comparison. And Galactonite got tricky in the second phase, now that's way even more so, even ignoring the changes to phase 2 from the original. It still has some solid fights, and despite a lot of the fears that we used to have, you can still quick kill the Metal General before he launches himself into the background, but things overall became a lot tougher for Parasol against bosses in Deluxe. Good thing Parasol just goes goo goo gaga against the bosses in the Wii version. Yes, to end things on a very high note, we shift our focus to the original Return to Dreamland, where Parasol Twirl just kinda wins this mode on its own for the most part. The Circus Throw helps here and there, and Parasol Dive definitely is a decent starter option and deals with the aerial enemies pretty well. These other moves, they help. Come on. I mean, I just said it, but come on. Look at this. Funny story, I recently hosted a race for Return to Dreamland that involved, of all things, Fire Emblem speedrunners giving the game a go. We had a lot of fun. I definitely want to host it again. But when it came time to fight Fatty Puffer, not a lot, if any, of them still had Wing, the ability of choice for any percent. Knowing how absurdly strong it is and how it's used for Hundo at this point, I suggested Parasol. My only advice to all of them when doing the fight was, no joke, use Parasol Twirl and don't think, zero thoughts. If I could tell that they were thinking a lot about it and were getting kind of nervous, I'd tell them, hey, zero thoughts! And if they didn't think, every time, no exception, their reaction was, wow, you were not kidding. We just needed to not think about that one. Yeah. And while obviously there's some thinking involved, you can't just literally turn your brain off, it's just nice to see Parasol have a move that's this good. Really, its only downside is that it's locked to the ground, but the original Return to Dreamland doesn't have that many bosses that hide in the air a lot. There's Grand Doomer, Galactonite Phase 2, maybe. Nolandia, I guess the Magalores too, they're pretty bad for Parasol. The fights like Goliath and the Sphere Doomers hide in the air a little bit, but have some pretty cool methods of getting quick kills, many of which involve using Parasol Twirl. And Circus Throw! I can't believe it! This move is still good! But the scariest part of this whole thing is that we haven't even talked about the best move in Parasol's kit yet. No drama, no suspense, no build-up. The best move is Parasol Drill. Of course, it's Dash Attack. Introduced in Kirby Superstar, this is the rare move that, despite appearing in several games, I would argue is good in every single one of them. From the Superstar duology to the Return to Dreamland style games, even quirky cases like Kirby Fighters. Worst case, this move is good. And best case? Well, stick around. Earlier, I had mentioned, and forgive me if I didn't, you've seen how long of a video this is, so you can't blame me for my shoddy memory. Or you can blame me for my shoddy memory, but this is just a bit, so it's fine. That Parasol in the Kirby Fighters games, while not bad, is nothing that great. And that's true, but Parasol Drill is definitely not to blame for that. Honestly, if Parasol just had a faster way of actually dealing damage, it would be one of the best abilities in the game overall. To be good in these games, you want to get in on your opponents fast, deal big damage, and watch them suffer. Parasol Drill is an amazing tool for getting in, and if opponents get out, you can just use it again to continue their suffering. So it has two of the three things that are needed to succeed. Shame about that whole dealing damage part, but what can you do? Believe it or not, Parasol Drill is actually still very good in Kirby Superstar. We'll get to Ultra later, but in the original Superstar, it's very easy to explain. For once. Parasol Drill is a dash attack. You want to dash and attack while you're using it, and yeah, it sure does that. There are a lot of dash attacks in this game that simply don't work. Maybe because their hitboxes are so small, or they don't travel very far, or just because the OG Superstar is really weird and it's just not kind of working out, who knows. But for movement, Parasol Drill is really, really good. The rest of Parasol could use some work, but baby steps. And sure, with or without those baby steps, Parasol Drill is only a regular amount of good in some games. I've said it a bunch throughout this video, but while Parasol Drill and Star Allies could be #1 material in other games, in Star Allies, it just can't keep up with Wing, or some Bluster abilities, or Mennonite, or Magalore, or the Mages, or Suzy, or I don't know, any Dream Friend with something very slightly resembling a dash attack. Why are the Dream Friends like this again? And while it's still quite an excellent move in Robobot, Parasol currently doesn't offer much outside of horizontal movement on the ground, with nothing else to keep up with that meta right now. Jet and Fire just kind of have movement on lockdown thanks to their aerial prowess, leaving Parasol with little room to experiment in regular runs. But again, Parasol Drill, not at fault for that one. That move is still quite good. Staying on topic here for a little bit, Triple Deluxe is an interesting case. Obviously, Parasol Drill is good, really good, but unlike the other two games, it has the potential to see really good use in regular categories. I've mentioned earlier that any percent may be on the cusp of seeing it get used via a mix in Royal Road. Honestly, there's a decent amount of potential for Parasol in a few spots, but going with what we actually know, there's the Royal Road mix as well as some utility in other areas. This utility is allowed to stay relevant because Parasol Drill is so good for movement, and the machine gun Parasol exists. It's just my goat right there. So there's 4 games that Parasol Drill is in that we haven't covered yet, and while it's genuinely phenomenal in all of them, 3 of them are linked fairly closely together, so we'll group them all in one. Kirby's Return to Dreamland and Deluxe, along with Kirby's Dream Collection, all feature Parasol with a version of Parasol Drill that has a few quirky aspects to it that make it one of the best dash attacks in the game. Hey, I said one of the best. I know Wing's dash attack is right there. You don't have to remind me, okay? So what makes Parasol Drill so good in these games compared to Triple Deluxe, etc.? For starters, while it lasts a lot shorter in those games, it travels a lot farther here. It also tends to immediately start dropping to the ground in those games, which in theory helps you land faster to get more dash attacks going. But what's a lot nicer is that in Return to Dreamland, you bounce a little bit if you use it early enough out of a jump. And look, I know I said early, implying that it has to, be early, but I added enough to the end for a reason. It's really lenient. The amount of things that you can get away with using Parasol borders criminal, but wouldn't it have a lot of end lag on it? Fat chance! It only does that if you use it on the ground, or a little bit less if you start it in the air and then land with it. If the move stops while you're in the air, and this applies to Return Deluxe as well, the end lag just doesn't happen. Sure, the move plays out and you get your momentum, but when it's over, Kirby doesn't awkwardly stand there questioning life-related decisions for a while. No, the move just stops and Kirby can do anything they want. If you've played these games before, you may be wondering how useful it can really be since you only get 1 Parasol Drill in the air per jump. Triple Deluxe Onwards fixes this, allowing you an infinite amount before you land, allowing you to do some pretty swag-looking Parasol Drill chains. Now, those are nice, but in Return to Dreamland, you get the manual multi-Parasol Drill, which is even cooler. See, if you use Parasol Drill in the air, tap down as it's finishing, and then hit the attack button again right after releasing, Kirby actually does another Parasol Drill in the air, without landing. In Return to Dreamland, and Deluxe, and the Dream Collection, I guess, but still, I'm not sure if this was intended by the developers or not. If we assume this isn't intended, then this would work just how the Superstar games worked, but the fact that you get to pick and choose when and how you want Parasol Drill to work, this isn't bordering on criminal anymore, it just is straight immoral, and you love to see it. While this is simple enough to understand for the actual Return to Dreamland duology, how does this all factor into Kirby's Dream Collection? Outstandingly. The best mobile version of Parasol being put in a game where all you really need to do is be mobile was a godsend. And while it does suffer for being in the same game as Wing still, it comes really darn close to beating Wing out. See, a lot of what makes Wing so much better than other mobile abilities is the fact that its vertical movement is better than everything that's not high jump. Horizontally, it is the best in class, but it's not the only one in class. And while there's some floating involved in these challenge stages, these really are a lot more about moving forward as quickly as possible. Parasol, while not number 1, is a strong second, close to being number 1, and has a huge advantage over whatever number 3 is. It's not even close. But do any of these games have the number 1 version of Parasol Drill? Honestly, they might. Vanilla Return to Dreamland, at least, very likely has the best case, given it's supporting one of the silliest boss killers in the whole series. That said, for my money, the best version of Parasol Drill belongs to my favorite game in the series. You already know what it is, Superstar Ultra. There's so much improvement here from the original Superstar, so let's get into it. For starters, there's the obvious. In the original, you use Parasol Drill, move a decent amount, and then be done. In Ultra, it lasts way longer, it travels farther, and ends with you just a little bit closer to the ground. All huge improvements that allow Parasol to move around a lot faster. Case in point, even in the current any % / beat Revenge of the King meta, the best of the best use Parasol and Parasol Drill for all of 2 seconds to get a huge speed boost in the first level of Dynablade. Magical. But where Parasol goes insane, as showcased by Sample in his amazing task video, but is actually quite easy to replicate as a human, is by combining the movement speed of Parasol with the movement boost you get from Invincible Candy. The results, as you can see on the screen, speak for themselves, with the speed boost from Parasol Drill being doubled. Heck, maybe even tripled. It's really fast. But another really nice perk is the damage boost that you get for existing. You can beat most bosses and mini-bosses in just a few hits if you can get the candy set up, and all you really have to do is stand there. Really, it's insane. But what can you do out of a Parasol Drill? Can you do another one, like in Return to Dreamland? Not quite, but check it out. If you use Parasol Drill after a jump, hold the opposite direction that you used it in, then float, you can actually perform momentum preservation like you do in Amazing Mirror. Granted, chaining these all together isn't as clean as Amazing Mirror, given there are some extra steps, but it's still a lot faster of a method of moving around than the default, and adds another layer of strategy to Parasol's already pretty deep metagame. Heck, Parasol Drill even helps in the boss rush modes. Yeah, a lot of Parasol Drill can be used in the boss rush modes, actually, not just talking about Superstar Ultra. If you think the lobby for the ultimate choice in Starlize is long, for example, try using Parasol sometime. Trust me, it'll go much faster. To end Superstar Ultra on a bit of a sentimental note, just Superstar Ultra, we've got plenty of time left in the video, I wanted to talk about how Parasol does in Gourmet Race Course 3, Onion Garden. For as long as history has been historying, that's right, 2008, runners have used Wing in actual speedruns to clear this course. Of course, it's easy to see why, and most importantly, they're correct in how, on paper, it is the best ability with the fastest time for clearing the course. So what does this actually have to do with Parasol? Well, in K-Star 2025, the yearly speedrunning relay race between Kirby speedrunners, Kirby Superstar Ultra was included, with the category being Beat Revenge of the King. Starting with Spring Breeze, make your way to Revenge of the King, beat Day-to-Day, get those credits, and boom, all done. Of course, one of the modes you have to clear is Gourmet Race, and come race day, everyone who took part in the relay chose Wing. Except for one person, a certain speedrunner that you may know named Klaire Fluffle. That's right, it was me, because I went with Parasol. Why would I do this? Well, maybe you'll stop questioning the almighty dog VTuber when you find out that, while everyone else in the relay got a 41XX with Wing, I got a 38XX with Parasol, giving me the fastest time out of every single runner, including the world record holder, Clomie. Yes, I popped off, and there is a lot to explain with the why here, and honestly, part of it doesn't even have to do with Parasol, so I'm just gonna let the footage I have do a bit of the speaking here for now, but the idea is that Parasol Drill and our old friend Parasol Dive both have heavily boosted speed when being used in this mode. While Parasol can't move up quite as well as Wing can, which costs it the fastest time, it's much better at moving down and is very comparable horizontally. So is Wing faster? Yes, but can Parasol keep up, even surpass what Wing can do? Also yes, and you love to see it. But no, of course, you already know we can't possibly be done with Parasol Drill yet. No, there's one final game that I've been saving, hiding up my sleeves, waiting for the chance to be discussed. And it's, you know, it is Kirby Battle Royale. Parasol Drill, by name and name only, is Parasol's charge attack. And it's kinda good. Swords is a lot better, but you get good damage off of it. If anything, I'd actually advise using this for modes like Coin Clash, and getting a good lead and then holding the charge for Parasol Drill. If anyone comes close to breaking your shield, then you can go, bam, use Parasol Drill and whack them into the ground. You get Parasol Drift as well for free, because why not? Look, this isn't actually going to help you go faster, it's just something, okay? With that, oh boy, alrighty, is that all? Believe it or not, no, we still have more to talk about. I wanted to save two specific games for last, as they are pretty unique in the grand scheme of what Parasol can do. They're unique games in general. Some might say that they're unfairly hated even. I am, of course, talking to the one meaty pants out there who doesn't like Superstar Ultra. We're still talking Superstar Ultra. Oh yeah, baby! Huh? What's that? Okay. I've just received word from upper management that we're actually talking about Dreamland 2 and Dreamland 3. I've also been informed that there is no upper management. This whole bit just kind of went nowhere. Anyway, Parasol doesn't have much going for it in KDL 2. It's used in best ending for a grand total of like 1.5 levels, and then it's never seen again. Granted, that's more than most abilities, and Kirby plus Parasol can do some funky things with the Parasol Drift after jumping or bouncing off enemies. At the very least, it is faster than your default walking speed, so I don't know, it's good for something. And for what it's worth, Ku plus Parasol is actually pretty good, being quite viable for newcomers when learning how Ku works. It's effectively Tornado, but it's Parasol, so Parasol gets all the credit here, ha ha ha, which would mean a lot if Ku didn't already cover movement so perfectly as is. The damage can compare to Ku plus Cutter, but it keeps you 100% invincible while moving at Ku speeds, so I would say not useless. Not worth much at a higher level, but yeah, hey, lower level speedruns matter a lot too. I'll say it as many times as I gotta, darn it. Now, Dreamland 3 is far more interesting. Ku plus Cutter was nerfed. Does this mean that Ku plus Parasol has a chance? Well, that kinda sorta got nerfed too, so no, not really. But oddly enough, in a best ending playthrough, Kind plus Parasol of all things winds up seeing use because of Ribblefield 2. And it's not the best, but it's not the worst either. Copium, sure, but it's worth mentioning, I suppose. Oh, but then it's used again in Sand Canyon 6 to make a jump with Kind for one of the robot pieces. Or you could just use GUI to cheese it as well. I don't know, Kirby runs have so much cheese, it makes me wonder how the lactose intolerant can handle them. But if you're worried I saved a whole whopping nothing burger for the very end, you would be mistaken. Remember a while back when we talked about Parasol Swing? Yes, I know I'm still talking about this move. I'm in an insane asylum, rocking back and forth, murmuring, remember Parasol Swing? Remember Parasol Swing? Remember Parasol Swing? Remember Parasol Swing? To myself over and over. In KDL 3, the Kirby plus Parasol Swing combo is actually pretty darn good for boss fights. Yeah, it's strange, and in your typical speedrun, you'll only really see it used for Pawn and Con, but it's the weird combination of the swing itself dealing pretty good damage, as well as the tip of it dealing that same amount of damage, kind of like Amazing Mirrors we talked about earlier, except even crazier somehow. That makes it all work. It's pretty weird that, in a game all about combining with your animal buddies to achieve all kinds of wild and wacky results, is regular old Kirby that uses Parasol the best. It's very weird. Phew, we've finally covered everything that Parasol has to offer. But, as always, we aren't done yet. It's time for the Kirby Copy Abilities Spotlight Rankings. It is time. We rank Parasol in every single game that has been in, which is a whole lot of them, more than any ability that we've covered yet. Not a dazzling 18 games. How will Parasol fare in the end? Let's find out. Number 18, Kirby Squeak Squad. I made it a point to not even mention this game. It's bad. Number 17, Kirby Battle Royale. It's actually not that bad, totally fine even, but put into a game where using any ability that isn't one of the top 3 actively loses you time. Yeah, no, sorry. Number 16, Kirby Fighters Deluxe. If I still counted multiplayer for these, this would be much better off, because the player base thought it had an infinite that it never actually had. But for speedruns, it's stinky bad. Number 15, Kirby Superstar. Actually has some pretty sweet potential. I've gotten some impressive boss kills with it in the past, if I do say so myself, but it's very hard to pull off anything that doesn't even wind up being as good as the truly broken stuff. Number 14, Kirby Planet Robobot. Nerfed to the ground for bosses from Triple Deluxe. There is a universe out there somewhere that gives it a use for any percent. Aside from getting a good code cube, right now it's got nothing. Number 13, Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. Again, not bad, but it's a jack of all trades, master of none. Good at movement, not great. Okay at attacking, not great. It has a niche or two, not as useful as other abilities. Number 12, Kirby's Dreamland 2. Some of the ability combos are pretty useful, but in a game with Ku, they aren't useful in the right ways. It's a shame, especially because Q plus Parasol is, ironically, very good for movement. Number 11, Kirby Fighters 2. It's got a pretty good time for hard, plus I may or may not have some ideas cooking for the single-handed mode as we speak right now. Why? Arho! But no real viability in the story mode, it definitely holds it back. Still a big improvement over Fighters Deluxe though. Number 10, Kirby's Adventure! One of the better abilities in the game, actually. With major glitches, without them it's actually quite awful. But we love glitches in this house, baby! Number 9, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. Despite all of the bizarre nerfs that it got, it can still zoom through levels and underwater portions with ease. Good movement is really, really important. Number 8, Kirby's Dreamland 3. Aside from the bizarre amounts of damage Kirby can do while wielding this nuclear weapon, it's got some random perks for various parts of the game. There are things that require using it, sure, but you don't have to immediately get rid of Parasol afterwards because it isn't very good. So, yes, I factor those things in. Shoutouts, by the way, to Dark Realu for discovering a 1-second time save with it for best ending, too. That's my goat right there. Number 7, Kirby Star Allies. Genuinely still quite good for movement, but with stuff like KSA Wing, Magalore, Mennonite, Mages, etc., it feels a bit less impressive. Boss fights are still where it shines a lot brighter, with incredibly strong tools to deal with bosses no matter where they are on screen. Again, KSA is crazier than most, so it isn't setting records and it's tough to use well, but is still very strong. Number 6, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. Kind of like Star Allies Parasol, but better. It's strong and is actually good enough to see usage against bosses, even in a speedrun setting. Its movement isn't the best, but with enough practice, it has the potential to be one of the fastest abilities in the whole game. Again, with enough practice, I really want to put emphasis on that point. Number 5, Kirby's Dream Chorus. Availability is always going to sting in this game, but Parasol's availability is quite decent, so it helps it more than it hurts. Having the ability to not only stop on a dime, but also course correct mistakes and give you longer aerial movement just goes absolutely insane. Still not one of the best, but a great ability overall. Number 4, and this is where things get real good, Kirby's Dream Collection! While it couldn't quite cross the metaphorical finish line and keep up with Wing, it still can cross the literal finish line by not only being used when it isn't mandatory, but also only falling behind Wing by a couple seconds, maybe even a couple of microseconds. It's really close. It is so much better compared to literally every other option in the game, as it turns out. Number 3, Kirby Superstar Ultra. I would add the hard eyes, but I'm already happy because, anyway, while I direly wanted my favorite ability to be number 1 in my favorite game, and it isn't, Number 3 is not only super impressive, but Parasol in this game specifically is super impressive. If you somehow need more of this dog in your life when you're done watching, I have an entire short dedicated to Parasol Kirby in Superstar Ultra, detailing some, not all, but some of the insane stuff that it can pull off. I used it in the most important Kirby speedrunning event of 2025, and in terms of Parasol and literally nothing else, did better than all of the other competition, which is saying a lot. Number 2, Kirby Triple Deluxe. This one just has potential written all over it. Sure, it's no fire for movement, but the movement is still fantastic, and the way it shreds bosses to shreds, I guess, impossible to ignore. It is this close to being faster than even Hammer for a good chunk of World 6, with people currently able to close enough to tie its time for Hammer without much in the way of practice. The future's looking bright, but even if it doesn't work out, it's still got those true arena times thanks to the machine gun Parasol, baby! Truly remarkable, and while it reaches higher highs than number 1, the best version of Parasol number 1 is Kirby's Return to Dreamland Original. Parasol Twirl against grounded bosses is straight up immoral in here, getting better times against some of these than even Hammer and Ninja can pull off. Does it struggle a bit with more aerial fights? Sure, but it still has one of the better times for the true arena overall. Even putting that aside, while it's certainly no wing, Parasol is, no question, top 5 ability in the entire game for any form of speedrunning. Very strong, very fast, lots of utility and advanced tech that allow it to do things you would never expect, and, of course, you've still got the Goo Goo Gaga Parasol Twirl to carry you versus bosses. A top tier ability in a top tier game, you love to see it. And now, we get to the Kirby Copy Ability Spotlight ratings! Not at all like the rankings, except the names up until you get to the letter R. Maybe that made sense. Anyway, on a beginner level, where aspiring Kirby speedrunners enter a world of whimsy, wonder, and controller throwing, Parasol, I would give an A+. Not quite an S, just because it's got some unique factors to it that can mess newcomers up, but very rarely will you find a Parasol that will actively slow you down. Yo, and how can I not mention Parasol Twirl and Return to Dreamland right here? On an intermediate level, where more experienced runners can test their mettle without being challenged by the best of the best. Hi, that's me, I'm intermediate. I say this all the time. Parasol, this one's kind of tough. Very high highs, fairly low lows. I am gonna be generous here. You can feel free to call me biased all you want, you meaty pantses. I'm giving Parasol an S-. Just like Ninja, the highs are so absurdly good, and while it has more lows than Ninja, Parasol has a lot more niche tech that it can pull off, which gives it use. Parasol borders on being the king of backup strats. Now, I would rather base them around Parasol than Ninja, although, again, Ninja definitely has higher highs. I'm not saying it doesn't. And now, up next, on a casual level, I give Parasol a fun out of 10. And finally, on a more advanced level, where the best of the best strut their stuff, as much as I want to say S+ to keep the good vibes going and also my bias, I gotta give it a B, which is still good, don't get me wrong, a B is good, but I'd only call it truly great in 4, maybe 5 of these games in total. Given that Parasol is in 18 of these, that's a lot of filler that it has to fill in. I'm so good at this whole English thing. And with all of this, we have one final question to ask for closing out this video for good, or until I do a season 3 of these spotlights and I wind up talking up Parasol for over 2 hours. Good golly gosh. Anyway, is Parasol actually any good? That's a pretty easy yes you got from me. It's really heckin' good. But how good is a difficult question. It's number 1 in my heart. It always has been and always will be. But it's hard to talk about it and not bring how much it's outclassed in a lot of these games to attention. It isn't as bad as something such as Needle in this regard. It's still quite good in most of the games, even when it is outclassed. But if you've heard me gush about Parasol over the years and figured that it just had to be some god slayer of an ability, no, I just gush about it a lot because I love it a lot. Speedrunners are capable of having fun too, you know. Sorry for breaking your illusion there, gosh. And that, as they say, is finally that. Glad I got this one out of my system, and now I can go back to uploading after 2 months. Whoops. Well, you know what they say, which is good because I don't know what they say. Again, if you like the video, please give it a like and subscribe. Voting for the next spotlight ends on February 22nd, 2026, so vote before then. If you'd like to go the extra mile, please consider becoming a Patreon patron or join as a YouTube member or a mempup to help with the creation of videos like this one. Special thanks to my head-patting, Fluffle fan, Puptrons and Mempups, Freakish Uproar, Lydia Scribe, Heavy Points, Lizzie, and Galaxy Fan 4, and Galaxy Fan 5. I love you all! And until I see you all again, I have been Klaire. Thank you so very much for watching this long, and until I see you all again, bye-bye!